Sent her friend a post that I did in response to an anti-Semitic sign in Ann Arbor.
Yes.
And her friend's response was, I still can't support him because he is not willing to say, or he sidesteps the question about Israel's right to exist.
Right.
Did I get the question right?
Yes.
So let me break down the question into a couple of parts and then talk to them specifically. I think it is absolutely critical for us to differentiate between Israel, a foreign government, AIPAC, a US-based political action committee dedicated specifically to supporting the Israeli government, US support for the Israeli government, and Judaism and Jewish people. Those are all separate things. Where it gets difficult is that for a lot of people they'll say, because the majority of Jewish people support Israel and they may see AIPAC as a legitimate expression of their support for Israel, if you attack Israel and AIPAC, you are by definition attacking Jewish people. That is the argument that is made.
Well, I will say she is totally against Netanyahu.
Understood. Has my assessment here been somewhat consistent with how folks are?
Yep. We're getting to it.
So the hard part for me is that on the other side of this is another group of people, namely the Palestinian people, and their rights. And we tend to have this conversation about Israel in a vacuum that specifically excludes the question of Palestinians and their rights. And so folks implicitly end up pitting support for Israel against the interests of Jewish people in America without also asking, but what about the rights of Palestinians and their rights, right? What about them and their rights? And my point is that to use the argument that not supporting a foreign government because a group of people support that foreign government now is tantamount to opposing those people and being hateful toward those people is a bit of a step. And when you start making that step, there is a dangerous secondary cost to it. Because now you're saying anybody who would support Palestinian rights in opposition to what Israel is doing is by definition against Judaism and the Jewish people. And I just think that whole conversation has gone too far. So for me, I always say, we have to differentiate between those two things. If you want to stretch the definition of anti-Semitism to include a foreign government, that to me is a step too far. Because that would be like somebody saying that I oppose the Egyptian military and what Egypt is doing, and me calling them anti-Egyptian, as if they have an anti-Egyptian bias. But I, as an Egyptian American, sit counterposed to the Egyptian military and the Egyptian government. So by definition, if we applied the same approach to any other group of people, I would myself be in opposition to my own people, which is kind of a problem. And I can imagine that for a lot of folks here who may share similar feelings about the state of Israel and its actions, particularly as related to Palestinians and their rights, that question of being self-hating can be particularly painful for people to have to say, right? Or to say about you. So all that is to say this. Let me just put it plainly. I believe that Jewish Israelis and Palestinians have equal rights to peace, dignity, and self-determination. And I often struggle with the question that people ask in this particular scenario, because what they now ask is, do you believe in the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state? Which to me forces the question of a definition of what a Jewish state means. Are we saying Jewish by faith? Or are we saying Jewish by power? Or are we saying Jewish by majority? If you say Jewish by faith, that opens up a whole other set of questions, which are, whose interpretation of the faith? Is it Hasidic interpretation of the faith? Or a conservative interpretation of the faith? Or a Reform interpretation of the faith? Or a humanist interpretation of the faith? And do we believe in theocracy generally? Right? And I would say that I do not believe in theocracy generally, and I choose to live in the United States of America as a Muslim because I want everybody to have the right to pray as they choose to pray or not pray at all. And there's an internal conflict about how you define Judaism here in the first place. Okay, if you're not saying it's Jewish by faith, then you're saying it's Jewish by power. Then the question becomes, how do you sustain democracy if you don't have a Jewish majority? And then to say it's Jewish by power, are there particular offices that have to be held by Jewish people? If so, what kind of Jewish people? Hasidic Jewish people, Reformed Jewish people, conservative Jewish people, humanist Jewish people? And also, what happens then if there is a conflict between democracy and who holds power? See what I mean? All right, if you're not saying all that and you're just saying Jewish by majority, then there's two questions about how you maintain a majority. You either remove some people or you bring in other people, right? And that creates a whole number of justifications for a whole bunch of actions that I think none of us would appreciate. And then there's the question of how Israel sits right now. And Israel sits right now bypassing the issue by maintaining what is in effect an apartheid state, wherein there is administrative control de facto of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza without actual democratic rights for any of those people. And it's been sustained now since 1948. And then there's the additional question of what are the rights of people who have been displaced by Israeli action, not just in 1948 and in 1967 and in 1978 and in 2026, but what happens going forward. So all of that is to say, I'm just breaking down the question in all of its parts for a reason. Because all of that is to say, I need folks who want to ask me that question, what it is that they mean by that, and how that is consistent with any form of liberal values that we say we believe in here in the United States. And the last point I'll say is this. A lot of folks who want to sidestep the whole conversation say, well, the best single answer is that there should be two states, a state of Israel and a state of Palestine. The hard part about that is our tax dollars right now have been funding leadership in the state of Israel who is counterposed to the possibility of a state of Palestine. And it's not actually our job to decide what the peace looks like there. It is their job. But so long as Palestinians lack a voice in this conversation, we can't actually get to a place where there's an equal conversation about what that actually looks like. And so Israel exists, to answer your friend's question. It exists. Now, when people ask me the right to exist, I'll just tell you, like, it exists as it stands, but nobody ever asked me about the right of a Palestine to exist. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't exist. And so I just push back on the characterization here because I need somebody to really, in brass tacks, have a debate, not gotcha questions about do you believe, yes, no. Let's actually have this conversation about how we get to the point of having equal rights for Palestinian people and equal rights for Jewish Israeli people, and then create a circumstance where our tax dollars are enabling a real conversation rather than protecting the current status quo against ever having to have a conversation about what a Palestinian right to self-determination, peace, and dignity looks like. See what I mean? So that was probably a very long-winded answer to your friend's question. And given that your friend is here, I'm not going to ask you to be like, and Abdul said, my tracker is he's got the video here. You could just ask my tracker. This is my Republican tracker friend. Good to see him. He's got the video. Maybe he'll share it with you, and your friend can take it. But he's probably going to use the video instead to clip into little notes and take me out of context. So, love you, bro. All right.